In 1974, in Wichita, Kansas, an ordinary Midwestern city was shaken by something no one could truly comprehend. Behind the doors of quiet neighborhoods and suburban streets, a darkness had taken root. It introduced itself with a name that was both a confession and a threat: BTK, bind, torture, kill. The man behind those words was Dennis Rader. To his neighbors, he seemed like a husband, a father, and a church leader. He worked for the city, enforced code compliance, and sat in the pews on Sundays. But beneath that mask of normalcy, he harbored a secret life driven by obsession and cruelty. The first attack came suddenly, with the Otero family in January 1974. Parents and children bound, tormented, and their lives taken. The violence was so deliberate and cold, it left the community stunned. Rader relished in the fear he created, sending letters to the press, taunting the police, and naming himself BTK. His crimes would not be constant, but they would return in waves over the next 17 years. Each time he struck, families were left broken, and investigators were left searching for a ghost. Through the late 1970s and into the 1980s, Rader's identity remained hidden. He blended in with the rhythms of daily life, raising children, serving as president of his church council, and walking unnoticed among those who had no idea what he was capable of. His ability to compartmentalize, to appear ordinary while carrying such darkness, was part of what made his acts so chilling. And then, in 1991, the violence seemed to stop. For more than a decade, there was silence. Some wondered if he had died or moved away. Others feared he was simply waiting. But in 2004, 30 years after his first crimes, BTK began to write again. Letters and packages appeared, puzzles, photographs, and mocking messages. He had grown restless, and he wanted to remind Wichita that he was still there. What he didn't realize was that the world had changed. Technology had advanced. When he asked investigators if a floppy disk could be traced, they told him no. He believed them. That disk led police to the computer at his church and to the man who had hidden in plain sight for decades. On February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader was arrested. In court, he described his crimes with a cold, methodical detachment that left survivors and families reeling. There was no remorse, no real acknowledgement of the pain he had caused, only the details of how he carried out his fantasies. Today, Dennis Rader is serving 10 consecutive life sentences in a Kansas prison. He will never walk free again. The story of BTK lingers because it reveals something profoundly unsettling about the human experience, the possibility of evil concealed beneath the most ordinary of lives. For years, Wichita lived with an invisible shadow, and for years, no one knew that shadow sat in church, mowed his lawn, and waved to his neighbors. Remembering BTK is not about giving him attention. It is about remembering the victims whose lives were stolen, and the fragile trust that was broken in a community that thought it knew its own. It is about the vigilance and persistence it took to bring him to justice. And it is about a sobering truth, that sometimes the darkest chapters of history are written not by strangers from afar, but by those who seemed most familiar.